Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your attendance. Today's meeting of the Northamptonshire Police, Fire and Crime Panel. Today's date's the 18th of September, and time is 12:36. I will move on with today's agenda, but first and foremost, we've got a few substitute members in today. I would introduce members around the room for those viewing from outside and those in the public gallery, starting with myself, Councillor Mark Arnold, West Northampton Council, and Chair of the Police, Fire and Crime Panel. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Caroline Cuss. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Northamptonshire Police, Fire and Crime Panel.
Councillor Andy Sims, member of the panel.
Councillor James Towns, North Northampton Council, substituting for Councillor Emily Fedorovich.
Councillor Barbara Jenny from North Northampton Council, representing Russian South.
Yeah, Councillor James Pesser, Deputy Leader, substitute for Councillor Morris.
Daniel List, West Northampton Council, normal member.
Vaughan Ashcroft, Chief Finance Officer for the Commissioner.
And Johnny Blood, Chief Executive Officer for the Commissioner.
Danielle Stone, Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner.
Anne Battam, Chair of the Joint Independent Audit Committee.
Good morning, I'm Andy Frost and I'm an independent member of the panel.
Eddie MacDonald, Councillor for North Northamptonshire, a normal panel member.
Sally Keeble, Councillor in West Northampton, panel member.
James Edmonds, Democratic Services Assistant Manager.
Sarah Hall, Director of Governance and Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to apologies for non-attendance. I've got Councillor Fedorovich, North Northampton Council, Councillor Towns substituting, Councillor Craig Morris, West Northampton Council, Councillor Pesser, the Deputy Leader of West Northampton, substituting. Ms Pauline Woodhouse, Independent Member, is absent. Further apologies from Councillor Richard Butler, West Northampton, taken ill a couple of days ago, and also Councillor Kellett, North Northampton Council. The substitutes aren't available today, so our apologies. We'll move forward to item 2, the notifications for requests from members of the public to speak. There are none received and at the point of publication. There are no further requests. Item 3 on today's agenda is a declaration of interests. I have to invite anyone present to declare any interest, pecuniary, non-pecuniary otherwise. Anybody? That's taken. No items to declare. Item 4, the Chair's announcements. Nothing specific, but I would comment that it's great to see a populated public gallery at the back there of members, non-members, candidates for commissioners and otherwise. So thank you, and your participation is always welcome. Thank you. Point number 5, the minutes of the previous meeting. Hopefully members have had the opportunity to review the previous meetings and to agree to their accuracy or any corrections they may wish to raise. Anyone present? Okay, do we have a copy of the minutes? Thank you. Okay, minutes are taken and agreed. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now on to the formative business. Item number 6 on today's agenda is the Joint Independent Audit Committee Annual Report 24-25, and I'd like to introduce Anne Battam, the Chair of the Joint Independent Audit Committee, to present the annual report. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. So I chair the Joint Independent Audit Committee, and our role is to provide independent assurance to do with risk management and financial management for the organisations. So we have a full complement of members and 4 meetings in the year, and all members attended all meetings. And the members have a full range of skills and expertise across risk, IT, audit, finance and estates and management. So the things we looked at this year, so we have objectives And I'm pleased to say that we fulfilled all 4 of our objectives for this year, and they were all completed. We held workshops to do with governance, which was postponed from previous year because of the flux in roles and new people into roles. So we held a workshop on that in June last year, which was really informative and gave us assurance that the governance structures and accountability was in place. We also had to, as usual, on the accounts, both the fire accounts and the police accounts. So the key topics, a topic that's been there for the number of years is the annual accounts. And you may or may not be aware that there was delays in annual accounts being signed off by auditors. We had new external auditors with Grant Thornton, and the relationship has been really positive, such that I'm pleased to report that all audits up to 2023 had been signed off by December, which was well in advance of the government's backstop date. So things are really moving forward. We reviewed draft accounts for 23 and 24, and these were signed off with an unqualified opinion for fire. Within the time allowed or the time set. So I think this has been a very difficult time, and we feel that with the new auditors, things are really moving forward. And I'm pleased to report that the PSAA, which is the Public Service Audit Accounts Authority, are looking at setting the rates for this current 25-26 audits, and it looks as if the fees will not be too exorbitant, so they've been fully budgeted for. So we feel for the first time it's positive looking forward. We've had a workstream on future systems, and we now find that all of the future systems are thoroughly embedded within normal working practices or business as usual, and therefore that won't be a particular focus going forward. Risk management, we're always aware of that, and the risk registers for the organisations come in rota to every JIAC, and there were no concerns at the moment. I think we look at how the risks are being classified, how they're brought to the risk register, how they're dealt with, and is there the right amount of governance and oversight, and a time limit set for actions to mitigate risks. There's a comprehensive capital programme, and we did have an estates workshop earlier this year to look at that and how that's being managed, and that was really, really interesting, and I think gave us assurance. The medium-term financial plan comes every year, and we check that things are budgeted for and that they are deliverable. Internal audit, we look at, first of all, an assessment of internal audit, and once again, we've now got MASARs in place for both organisations, which allows for a streamlining of reports and that they're looking at things in the same way. We also look at all the audit recommendations that are made and that these are dealt with and planned and actioned within a suitable time frame. I've mentioned external audit. So looking forward, we feel that we're in a good place, a better place than we have been for the last few years. We've got objectives for next year, and we always have room if something crops up that is of concern either to the Commissioner or whatever something happens, we've always got room in the plan to look at something specific if necessary. So I commend you the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I will now ask members around the room to comment on the report and any questions to you, if that's okay. Starting with Dr. Coos.
Thank you. Thank you for this. It's very detailed. Just one thing, I think you sort of, when you were talking, you said you'd done your look across risk management and you didn't see any issues, and yet the report talks about a particular risk area around IT, the resilience of the IT systems, in particular disaster recovery plans and the testing of. So can you just tell me a little bit about that? Is that kind of what your confidence level is in that then?
I think with the risk register, we're looking at governance and process. So we're looking at, are the risks coming to light, how are they being brought to the committee, and then how they're being dealt with. So yes, there will always be risks. There'll be red risks, medium risks, whatever. So our role is to look at the way the risks are coming so that risks are not missed and that risks are dealt with in a reasonable time frame. So we hold them to account on dealing with the risks.
Can I just then ask, are you confident then? What's your level of confidence that this has been managed well, the risks?
We've got IT expertise on the panel, and yes, we are confident that the risks are being managed.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In relation to the fire accounts being signed with the unqualified opinion, is the new audit position drawing a line under that issue? Or is that just now left as in status?
I might ask Vaughan to comment on that. I mean, an unqualified opinion is really good, and that's what you'd want. So I don't foresee there are any issues with that.
No, for the fire accounts, it was unqualified opinion for 23-24, completely clean accounts. So we start fresh in 24-25 with a completely clean.
There's no legacy issues?
Not for fire. For police, it's slightly different because it was a disclaimed opinion, which is the case for probably the majority of police accounts across the country. And the external auditors have come to us in a complimentary way to say we'd like to use us as one of the test cases for getting us out of that disclaimed opinion because of the quality of the work that our team has done to service the fire accounts. They've taken some learning from that. So the intention is to get an unqualified opinion on police much sooner than we'd otherwise would normally get it.
But there's no legacy stuff behind that previous stuff?
Nothing specific. No. It's just catching up. So there's no outstanding disagreements about presentation of the accounts or issues that we're currently aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Sinley, any other questions? No. Councillor Towns?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to raise the issue of the risk that basically Dr. Cuss brought up. But appreciate Jaguar Land Rover's very much in the news at the moment with issues it's experiencing. And it's all very well having good IT security procedures, but it's been drummed into me that people are often the weakest link into IT systems. So I think training is very important as well. So that's the only point I would make. Thank you.
I would say that the member on the JIAC had experience at the University of Northampton, and that when they had a cyber attack. So I think it's very high on our radar.
Councillor Jenny?
I don't have any comments, thank you.
No problem at all. Councillor Petter? Councillor Lister? Andy?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, but before I ask the questions, I'd just like to compliment the position you're in this year compared with last year. I think when this was reported last year, the accounts hadn't been signed off, you weren't sure who your auditors were going to be, so this is a lot more positive than the report we saw last year. So there's a lot of work obviously gone on, so thank you for that. A couple of questions is, on page 23, your medium-term financial plan, you say you had a look at it, but there's no comment about, is it robust, is it acceptable, can it be delivered? Have you done a report around assessing it rather than just saying you've looked at it?
Yeah, I mean, it comes to the JIAC for, I'm not sure whether it's for approval actually, is it? Or just to note, but we look at exactly that. could this be delivered? Can it be delivered within the costs that it says? Is it comparable to other organisations, you know, benchmarking? So yes, we look at all of that when we look at the plan.
Okay, so you're happy that
We're happy that the plan can be delivered.
Okay, good. My second question is your 4 objectives for last year. The first one was about the 3 organisations coming together and the benefit of that. Because the whole idea of police, fire, OPCC coming together is the sharing of back office, etc., etc. Have we seen a detailed report? Have you seen a detailed report? Have you written a detailed report on what are the benefits of that now? Because I don't think I've ever seen this is where we are with it.
It didn't come as a report. We had a workshop, so we had a presentation, and a workshop is slightly different because you can talk more freely and you can have everybody say everything. So we looked at the structures, at the 3 structures, and how the accountability lines went within all the structures, and really to make sure that A, there was resilience in case somebody left, and also to check that there wasn't over manning, if you like, so that there was feeding in from all of the organisations into the structure. So that was, but there isn't a report from the workshops as such, not a written report.
So are you happy as the DRAC that you think all the possible efficiencies are being explored?
We were, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor MacDonald?
I have no question, Chair.
Councillor Keeble? Okay, I'll have a couple of bits, if I may. And going back to the fees and some details, there might be a question for Vaughan to come in on, but you talked about the auditing fees and the costs of the department. Are they benchmarked against other similar PFCCs of counties or authorities of a similar size? What's the process, if you could clarify for the panel and the public?
Yeah, I would perhaps get Vaughan to do that, but it comes from the PSAA. So it's not something we negotiate ourselves independently.
So the PSAA negotiate the contracts on external audit for us, as they do for the majority of police forces and local authorities. What we do talk about the fees. When you say benchmarking, they are a topic of conversation in our regional meetings, certainly across the East Midlands, to make sure that they are fair, particularly as things have been a little bit out of the ordinary over the last 4 or 5 or 6 years. What we have recently, we've been waiting for quite a little while because there was some uncertainty about what we would be charged and what the negotiation position on fees would be for that period since COVID, where audits weren't delivered on time and we were really unhappy with the work of our previous external auditors. We've had that through now. The fees are lower than they should have been, which is good because the work wasn't undertaken. So we've scrutinised that to make sure that the fees are fair in terms of what we did actually get out of external audit compared to what they should have done. And what we're now doing is making sure there's funds available to get us, certainly on the police, to get us back into an unqualified, undisclaimed position so that there's enough budget to cover those audit fees from the new auditor and deliver all of that.
Okay, so where we are with the fees today, you're happy that the fees that you're spending are in line with what they should be, or are we over and above?
No, we've got enough money in the budget to cover what...
That wasn't the question, sorry. Are we paying the right amount of money? Is the authority paying the right amount of money? Not is it?
I feel we are now.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a concern. I was doubtful, and we were all kind of waiting, thinking if these fees come through and they're higher than we want them to be, we will fight them. And we do sometimes dispute the fees that come through from PSAA, particularly when they start adding on stuff for extra work. And we have challenged, we always challenge them, and we have had some wins with that, getting the fees knocked down slightly. But often it's more about explaining what service we're getting from audit. And so to answer your question, yes, I'm happy that we're paying for what we should do.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarity. Back to Anne, a question on risk. Comments obviously around the room from members about IT.
Yeah.
Could you, I do find, if I'm brutally honest, some of the areas of the report a little bland in detail. What risk methodology are you applying to this? And could in future the committee maybe detail the methodology you're applying to how you arrive at low risk, no risk, medium, high, or otherwise? Because otherwise we're making statements without qualification, in my personal view.
Okay, well, the Audit Committee looks at the risk register, so we are not quantifying risks. We're not using anything. So the risk register comes to us, but we look then at, is this reasonable? How are they categorising risks? Is it how we would expect? Why are they doing it that way? So that is our role, is an oversight of the risk. So not to produce a report, but to look at the report that is produced and check that, A, it's produced in line with good practice, B, that it's covering all the areas like IT, etc., and then that the risk management is in place and is actually being managed to the dates and the time frame given. So ours is an oversight function in that way.
Okay, but generally speaking, the committee's happy with the risk methodology applied by the office. Okay.
Yeah.
If I may add, it might
you
be
may
helpful. What is included in our rolling internal audit plan, we do include an audit of risk management within there. I think it's every 2 or 3 years, so we get external auditors in to look at our risk management processes, and that is fed into the JIAC as well. So you get kind of a rounded approach.
Excellent, thank you. I think I'm going to invite Carolyn to come back in.
Thank you. Annie, it's just a question. On you've got Appendix B and C, the Joint Independent Audit Committee aims and objectives. So in 24-25, you've got 4 objectives, and going forward, there's another 3. What would be really helpful to see is sort of the outcomes, the so what question, because as a panel, I'm sitting here looking at this and going, well, that's really laudable, yeah, review the organisation, continue to focus on timely, but how do we know that a difference has been made? It's the so what question. So by carrying this out, has there been a difference made? So what would be really helpful is actually, when you do the aims and objectives, what is it you're hoping to achieve, and did you achieve that? And that would be really helpful for a panel for then us to assess that, because I don't know if this has been successful or not. I have no idea, because what I'm just reading is these 4 statements. So if that could be considered, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I mean, I think we cover in the report the areas that are part of the objectives, but I can see what you mean. So, yeah, we'll put that in for future.
Thank you, Anne. I think if that's the case, and there's no further input to have on that, then the question to the panel is, will you please note the reports? Is everyone happy to note the report with a show of hands to pass that through? Unanimous, thank you. Thank you, Anne. Okay, so we will move on to item 7 on today's agenda. It's the support for victims and witnesses of crime in Northamptonshire. I'd like to invite Fiona Campbell, the Chief Executive Officer of Voice for Victims and Witnesses, to give a presentation of the work of Voice for Victims and Witnesses. And this is a topic the panel identified at a previous meeting for its inclusion in its work programme. Fiona, have you got a microphone?
Would I be able to introduce this subject, Chair, if you don't mind?
Yes,
all right?
Commissioner, yeah, that's absolutely fine, thank you.
I just want to highlight to the panel how important this work is, and I would encourage you to go onto the website so that you get a really good overview of what is being offered through this service. And I think for councillors, it's really, really important that when you're meeting your constituents, you can give them that information and encourage them to have a look at the website and to use the services where they need it. I'm particularly proud that I inherited, have to give due where it's, have to give praise where it's due. I inherited a situation where this service is in-house. An awful lot of my commissioner colleagues have to commission the work from outside sources, and I hear from them from time to time how difficult that is and how unsatisfactory that is. So I'm really pleased that we've got an in-house service, which means it's agile. It can respond to new needs as they come along. And I'm really proud of this service, so I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you. And, of course, we've got our wonderful Director of Services here, Fiona.
Thank you for that introduction. And thank you for letting me present to you this afternoon. James is actually assisting me with the presentation, so thank you for that, James. If we could move on to the next screen, please. So Voice for Victims and Witnesses aligns with the public safety plan, the Safe and Sound plan, and its 3 overarching themes: visible community services, professionalism and standards, and a strong public safety plan. We have our objectives, next page please. We have our objectives to deliver the OPFCC public safety plan by providing high quality casework, excellence in witness care services, by increasing public confidence, by the success of our people, and always striving to continuously improve our services. We also deliver on behalf of the multi-agency partner funders a county-wide Leading Lights accredited independent domestic violence advisors and multi-agency risk assessment conference service, and that's what we're striving to achieve. We also want to retain the Victims' Choice Quality accreditation, which we were accredited back in April 2023. Next page, please. So we understand that victims want one place to support them, whether they wish to go through the criminal justice process or whether or not they just want practical and emotional support. The PFCC has set up Voice of Victims and Witnesses to be the single go-to place for victims of crime of any age in Northamptonshire to get the support that they need. The service is free and confidential and supports children and adults when they report the crime to the police or not. So we get a daily transfer of data from the police. We're joint data controllers, and we also have professionals that report into us, and we have individuals that report into us. Next page, please. So our services and what we do. We have different teams within Voice that make up our service provision. They are our adult service, our children and young people service, our restorative justice service, road harm service, the Sunflower Centre, and we have the contract management for Serenity, which is a serious assault referral centre in Northamptonshire. Next page, please. Our adult service supports victims of all crime types who are aged over 18 years. The team provide the triage service for all referrals coming into all of our Voice service provisions and provides the initial contact with those who have self-referred in. Those have been referred by professional and those that we proactively contact following the report to Northamptonshire Police. Our Children and Young People Service provides support to those that are aged between 6 and the provision goes up to 25 where there have been additional needs that have been identified. Next page, please. Our Restorative Justice Service focuses on those cases where crimes have been committed. There is an immediate justice programme that is under the OPFCC, which doesn't come under my role, that deals with the lower end restorative justice cases. But these cases that we deal with are where there have been crimes committed and they're at that higher level. And it gives individuals the opportunity to ask those that have harmed them why it happened, how it happened, and for those two to have a conversation and be able to make amends and repair what has been done. Our dedicated road harm service offers emotional and specialist trauma therapy and bereavement support to families and victims who have been directly involved in serious road traffic collisions. Unfortunately, we do see a lot of these within the county, and the support that is provided is really beneficial to all of those involved. Next page, please. Our witness care unit provides support to all of the victims and witnesses of crime who are progressing through the criminal justice system. Victims are informed about their rights under the Code of Practice and witnesses about the Witness Charter. And we provide practical and emotional support to victims and witnesses required to attend court in the form of assessing their needs, if they require special measures, if they need accommodation or transport to assist them to get to court, and then we update them with the outcomes of those hearings and provide any additional support. And they work very closely with our other teams within Voice, so that we get the right practical support in place for those individuals and so they could give their very best evidence. Next page, please. The Sunflower Centre is the county-wide independent domestic violence advisors service that provides crisis response and risk management to the highest risk victims, survivors of domestic abuse and stalking, and they provide the administration for the county's multi-agency risk assessment conferences, which is shortened to MARAC. The Sunflower Centre provides specialist support to victim survivors with the provision of complex needs ISVAs, specialist stalking advisory service, a diversity inclusion IDVA. We are starting to support the family drugs and alcohol courts with an IDVA, which enables families to be kept together rather than children being taken away from families. And obviously that is really beneficial to those families where it is safe to do so. We also have Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme IDVAs, and we have dedicated IDVAs working with the safeguarding teams at both Kettering and Northampton General, providing safeguarding for patients and for staff. And we also have Crisis Response Service, which works out of the police control room on a Thursday through to a Sunday evening, working from 4 p.m. till 1 a.m. And that is to ensure that the right response takes place with the police in the control room and that the crisis intervention can be provided to victims at that time of need. There is also provision under a new pilot scheme, Raheem's Law, where Northamptonshire Police are one of the 5 forces to be chosen by the Home Office, where IDVAs offer this crisis response on a Wednesday evening from 3 p.m. to midnight. And again, with having that crisis provision on that evening, we have been able to support the police to obtain additional information from the victims at that crisis point. One particular case they went out to, they were going out on the basis that it was an assault. After the IDVA was there supporting the individual, she was then able to inform the police that actually the defendant had seriously sexually assaulted her, and he was actually charged with rape. So having that intervention at that crisis point is really powerful, and we are really trying to steer the national discussion around this, and we will continue to do that work. Next page, please. We also manage the ISVA service. So this is the Sexual Assault Referral Centre in Northamptonshire, and we manage the contract with them to provide that independent sexual violence advisor support that takes place at Serenity, which is a fantastic facility if anybody knows of it. They provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, support to individuals where they have been raped or seriously sexually assaulted. Next page, please. So, where do we take referrals from, and who do we accept? So, as I said, we have referrals from the age of 6. Individuals need to reside within Northamptonshire. We take third-party referrals with consent of the individual. Victims do not, however, have to have reported to the police. If they want to just come to us themselves, they can do so. We will always inform victims, however, that if there is serious safeguarding concerns for either themselves or for other individuals, then obviously we will need to speak to the police in respect of that. We accept historic, non-recent cases, and particularly around child abuse, where somebody is now an adult, but actually they want support regarding something that happened when they were a child, then we can assist and support them in that. We don't, however, take child sexual abuse cases. They are directly referred to the MASH for that expert advice and wraparound care. And also, just so that you're aware, murder cases, currently Victim Support have the national contract for murder cases and for those families. We support sometimes other witnesses and other friends of those that have been unfortunately murdered, but the family support is with Victim Support currently. Next page, please. So our vision is to deliver a range of personally tailored services that provide information, guidance, support and specialist help to victims and witnesses when they need it. And this will include emotional support, which is one-to-one support with a dedicated specialist support worker within voice service or with an independent domestic violence advisor within the Sunflower Centre, and where all the high-risk domestic abuse cases are managed. We will provide also interim emotional support pending mental health referrals or during watchful waiting periods. And we use those particularly in the road harm cases. So if somebody has been bereaved due to a road traffic accident, it's not appropriate for them to have counselling at that point, like a week later. You have to have a watchful waiting period. People have to be able to process what has happened. And while they are processing that, then our staff will support them, but we won't be providing counselling at that point. It will be later that the counselling then takes place. We also offer practical support. This may be, for example, safety planning, crime prevention resources, housing, legal letters, whatever that individual needs, we will make sure that they have the support in place to enable them to process what has happened and to go on and thrive. And as I said, we also provide that counselling and trauma therapy, particularly for our children and young people, but for those that have lost individuals through road traffic accidents or who have been seriously injured themselves. Next page, please. So, restorative justice. These cases will always be coordinated and facilitated by trained staff. Unfortunately, the restorative justice cases that we do have, it's very, very small numbers. I always say it's a bit like the stars aligning because it's very rare in many respects to have someone who has been harmed and someone who has caused that harm to want to come together and have those discussions. It is very rare. We've dealt with some cases. Previously, there was a prolific burglar and one of the victims wanted to know why their house had been picked. You know, they were concerned that, you know, the house had been watched and everything. It was nothing like that. It was basically, you know, they were walking past, the window was open, he was in and he was out. But they had, you know, real fear around that they had been being watched. So that assisted that victim greatly to understand that. But as I say, it's very rare that we can get people coming with the right meaning and the right intentions around that, and we have to manage that very, very carefully. So we coordinate all of our work with other services and agencies to make sure that there is a real holistic and coordinated response to the victim and to what has happened to them, and we will provide all the advice and information and signposts to other agencies where obviously it is appropriate for us to do so. We provide support and information to victims and witnesses travelling through the criminal justice process, keeping witnesses and victims informed of hearing outcomes, updating them with court hearings and providing the necessary support to attend court when required to give evidence. Where there is more complex support needed and is identified, we can access a wide network of local and national services and provide single points of contact for the residents in Northamptonshire to help guide them through the appropriate support that best meets their individual needs. Next page, please. So, to give you a flavour of what we actually deal with. So, last year we had just over 40,000 referrals, nearly 41,000 referrals. 32,788 into our adult service and nearly 4,500 into our children and young people service, and 3,681 referrals into the Sunflower Centre and 179 into the Road Harm Service. So referrals literally come in every day. And if I just take this weekend, for example, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, over the 3 days of the weekend, we received 279 referrals. So the team are working with that sort of volume on a daily basis. Next slide, please. So last year, our adult service provided 1,375 individuals with that tailored one-to-one support. And that tailored support will go on for a number of weeks until that individual is confident and able to move on from that impact that the crime has actually had. In our children and young people service, there were 64 children and young people that had counselling and trauma therapy. Our counsellors go out to schools and we will, work with children within schools. They will go to children's homes if that is, the best place for that children to receive that counselling. So we are very flexible in where we will deliver, that information and support for young people. Road Harm, again, 100 clients had counselling and trauma therapy, including bereavement counselling. So we offer families that have been bereaved 15 counselling sessions. If you've been seriously injured, we offer 12 counselling sessions to those individuals. There is always an opportunity if somebody is particularly struggling to ask for an extension of those, which we will look at. But that's the sort of number that people do actually have. Restorative justice, as I said earlier, it's a bit like the stars aligning. Unfortunately, there was only 2 referrals last year. Our team are working very hard and we do try and increase the amount of referrals for restorative justice. It can be really powerful and really assist offenders in understanding what their behaviour does to people. And obviously, that can be really powerful and try and, move them away from their offending history. The witness care team, again, very, very busy. In Q4, we were above the national average for witnesses attending court. We achieved 90.6%. The national average was 84%. We had put a business case in after COVID for some additional resource into witness care because, I don't know if you're aware, but the trials in the Crown Court are very, very lengthy. There's some real issues with the timings of cases going through, particularly the Crown Court. And with the additional resource that we've got in witness care, that is helping us to ensure that the victims and witnesses have the right support, the right communication around them. And I think that figure there displays the good work that is taking place. In Q4 last year, again, we had 1,663 victims and witnesses that were supported in the witness care team going through the court system. And we have, on average, about 1,500 cases a month that go through. So one case can have one victim, one witness. Another case can have multiple victims and multiple witnesses. And that contact needs to be with each and every one of them. So the average caseload at the moment currently that each of our witness care officers hold is 130 cases each that they're managing at any one time. So next page, please. The Sunflower Centre. We've had in 2024-25 1,688 high-risk domestic abuse clients actively engaging in support with one of our dedicated IDVAs over the year. Out of those, 491 clients were previously known to the service. We really encourage clients to keep reporting, which means that we do have repeat clients. But I think that is a good thing in one way, that it shows that they have the confidence to come forward and keep reporting. What we don't want is people to be having domestic abuse and not reporting it and not feeling confident enough to come forward. So in Q4, at the end of March 2025, we had 73% of sunflower clients were actively engaged in receiving our support, and 27% we were attempting to support, or they had actually declined support. Some people, when they are offered support, it isn't the right time for them to take up that support, and we obviously understand that. Caseloads, however, are very high within that team. And on average, we are currently managing, last week it was a total of 448 cases in a week. We manage the MARAC, which is the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conferences. In Q4 last year, our MARAC team heard 1,473 cases at MARAC, and these were held across the county in Northampton, South Northampton, Daventry, Wellingborough, East Northants, Kettering and Corby. And there's quite an even split with regards to the volume of casework and where it takes place across the county. Next page, please. Referrals against the crime types. These are obviously the bulk of our referrals. A good quarter of our casework, unfortunately, is domestic abuse. So that is where our focus really is. Obviously, there are other cases. We deal with a lot of violent crime. You will see there 8,291 violent crimes, and theft and fraud up at 8,557. Next page, please. So the impact and what our support actually has. We survey victims and survey witnesses because obviously we want people to have the very best experience when they come into contact with our service. So our voice service, 96% of our clients were satisfied or very satisfied with the service that they received. Again, 96% would recommend voice, and 93% said that they felt safer following our support. The Sunflower Centre, 95% of clients were satisfied or very satisfied with the service they received, and 95% would recommend voice, and again 95% felt safer following support. Next page, please. So in addition to all of that, we also attend county-wide events to promote how we can support victims and witnesses of crime. We deliver training to partners, which is really important, to the police, to North and West Northamptonshire councils, NHFT, NHS staff on domestic abuse, and on the multi-agency risk assessment conferences and how to report into us. We collaborate with other organisations through a programme of different presentations, and we always advocate for victims and witnesses of crime, increasing partnership working and opportunities to collaborate. Next page, please. So you will have seen the budget paper that has been put together. We are provided funding from the Office of the Police, Fire and Crime Commission, and we receive, they receive funding from the Ministry of Justice. And we also have funding from Health and from the different councils in respect of the Sunflower and Marak teams. The majority of our funding is on staff, obviously. We have running costs and expenses. We have the road harm contract, which is the counselling contract and the CYP contract and case management systems. And then you will see the breakdown of staffing at the bottom. Next page, please. So, these are our contact details, but before I go on any further, I just wanted to read out a couple of comments that our clients have actually said about the service that they received and about our staff. And one of them said, "You motivated me and gave me confidence. Thank you so much for listening to me. I just want you to know that what you do is amazing. The level of care and professionalism shown was exceptional. I felt like you were holding my hand throughout everything." And then the final one, "I did it. I secured a conviction, which I know was against all the odds." And I think to finish on that is really so positive, and I'm so proud of the staff that work so tirelessly to support victims of crime in the county. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Fiona. I don't think there's a member or person in the room who won't be grateful for the presentation and the quality of work you're doing. I see nods of heads. Thank you very much. I will open the floor if you're okay to take points. Is anybody over? I'll go right to left. Councillor Keeble, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a brilliant presentation. And do you have a newsletter we can sign up to just so we can continue to get information?
We don't have a newsletter, but you know, we can provide information if you wanted to put anything out on our,
that's
and
that would
to
be
include
helpful.
us, definitely.
Thanks. The particular question, well, there were two particular questions, if that's okay, Chair. One's about your work with children.
Yes.
I just wondered how you sort of manage that, because obviously at 6 they're very young, and sometimes the parents are the problem, and sometimes the parents are the solution, and presumably you have to, that must be quite a difficult situation to manage, particularly perhaps in domestic abuse cases. And the other thing was, I mean, the workload, the caseload is astonishing.
Yes.
And I just wonder how you balance getting the new cases coming in through the door with the historic ones, which, if you don't have any time limit in, presumably can be quite old. Now, I completely agree with the need to deal with historic cases, but obviously it must be a challenge to juggle both of them. So just on those two issues, particularly about the children one, because it is something that I've come up across quite often, and obviously you can't refer a child, you have to find a way of dealing with the parental and consent and carers issues. So
absolutely. So the contract that we have with our Children and Young People service is with Assist Trauma Care, and we have a contract with them. They are experts in providing the counselling and trauma therapy. If there are any concerns with regards to being able to support that child appropriately due to parental issues, they will work with the parents to address those issues. If there's particular other safeguarding issues, then we would obviously refer that through to, you know, make sure the wraparound service with social services and everything else is in place for that young person. So it is a bit of a wraparound support that we do. We don't all just do it on our own. We make sure that there are other agencies involved if they need to be involved. But just going back to like the drugs and alcohol court that we're going to be working in, you know, we've just had our IDVA that has just literally landed this week with Voice, who is going to be working with other professionals that will be at the drug and alcohol court and working with those families to make sure that actually the support is there for those families and to try and keep those children out of care facility and keep them at home where it's obviously safe to do so. But we work with those experts to make sure that that wraparound service is in place.
It's just one. Sorry, if you can.
That's all right.
It's just really about the consent issue. If a child, if there's a child who presents who has some issues,
yes,
and gets referred through to you, do you have to have the parent's consent or a carer's consent, or how do you manage that process? Because it must be very difficult, and sometimes children do wander around in a bit of a vacuum, you know, where some of the most difficult children or the most pressured children. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, if obviously there is a crime that's being committed, we will always ask the child and the guardian, obviously, what support that individual child and needs, and we will work with the guardian and the parent to make sure that right support is in place. If we felt that the parent was a blocker, for example, and there was particular safeguarding concerns around the child and getting the right support, then obviously we would do additional referrals to make sure that actually that child had the right support in place, if I can put it like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor MacDonald?
Nothing, thank you.
Andy?
Having been at the very start of this journey way back in probably 2014, when the first commissioner decided he was going to take this service in-house, and it was a brave decision, to see where you've got to is absolutely amazing over the last 10 or 12 years, and that's testament to clearly the hard work that's been done, because it was a real mess at the start. And I don't know if you were involved right at the start.
I wasn't involved at the start. I've been I was Chief Executive Director. I'm now Director of Victim Services for 8 years.
No. So it's really good to see where it's got to. I suppose my question is around, and Sally mentioned it, around the workload of the staff. Are you happy you've got the right support mechanisms around your staff to support their welfare and etc.?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously provide clinical supervision to our staff. We have one-to-ones, regular, one-to-ones with managers, etc. And we also, are very, very staff focused, because you can't support people correctly if you're not in a safe place yourself, if I can put it like that. So what the staff deal with on a daily basis is a lot of secondary trauma because of the nature of what they do. So we are very much, all over staff and making sure that they are safe in what they are doing, and obviously have the right support around them to enable them to do that. Because if they're not in the right place, they can't support people appropriately. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really important that their welfare is at the forefront of everything that we do.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Lister?
Yep, now I'm on. Thank you. It's really good, and really appreciate the work that you do. What can the panel do to support? Is there anything you can do, or is it just here for information, or what do you want from us?
I can answer that. There's a number of things. You'll be aware that West Northants cut £17,000 from the Sunflower budget last year, which, given the state of play in terms of their work, had a meaningful impact on the service. So I think looking at budgets, presumably both councils are going to be looking at budgets very, very soon. If you could, when you're looking at your budgets, just bear in mind the needs that have been outlined by Fiona. And in particular, what happened last year was a shock because we hadn't been told that there was going to be that cut. I found it in the budget papers. So we're partners, aren't we, in all of these things? And I think that collaboration and that style of working is really, really important. So my plea would be, please have those conversations with us before the budget is finally set. That would be really, really helpful. But the other thing is, everywhere I go, talking to people out in the community, it happened to me again last week, people are saying that they, when they talk to their counsellor, when they talk to that first person, they want to be given that information then. Do you know what I mean? They don't want to have to go and talk to a second person, third person, a fourth person. So from my point of view, thank you for the question, Councillor Lister. I think it's really important that councillors understand the service and then can talk to people as appropriately and refer them in or get them to refer themselves in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
actually doing another presentation next week to councillors. So Tuesday night.
I think I saw that on the agenda.
You might hear it all again.
No, I think that's incredibly useful to Councillor Lister's point. If members do have that as a first-hand piece of information to give out, it will come from training. That's excellent. Any other questions? We'll move on to Councillor Pesser. Councillor Jenny.
No questions as such, but I would really like to commend you and your staff on the work you're doing. It must be, well, it's obviously well appreciated. Just as a point of interest, if a victim, a child, then becomes a perpetrator, do they stay with you or are they passed to another organisation?
No, if they're a perpetrator, we don't support perpetrators. This is, our service is about victims and witnesses of crime. So, once they move over into the perpetrator camp, as it were, we don't support them in that.
Thank you, Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Fiona. Something just touched on is financing, and I just wanted to gauge a feel of the importance of these multi-organisations, multi-purpose organisations, agencies that you work with, and how much you rely on those. And I know Voice won't necessarily be the first port of call for many people. They will go to other charities and organisations they're aware of. So I just wanted to grasp how important those agencies are with you.
Yeah.
Concerns because budgets are tight.
Yeah.
Do you have concerns about their future funding going forward? Because I know at Kettering Town Council we support some of these groups financially.
Yeah.
Day-to-day costs.
Yeah, I think there is a squeeze, isn't there, on everyone's budgets. There's a squeeze on our budgets for the high risk domestic abuse service that we provide. I know that the refuges within the county are, in difficulties with their funding. I know rape crisis are always, needing additional funding. I think it's, we run on very lean principles. All of our casework and how we are structured and processes, etc., is all on lean principles to make sure that we can try and manage the workflow as best as we can. But at the end of the day, we need to be in a position, and our partners need to be in a position to be able to support those individuals at that point of need. And I don't see, and I haven't seen, the level of violence that we currently are dealing with before. Some of the casework that we are dealing with is extremely severe and very, very high risk. And with that, you do need to be able to put in place all of that safeguarding and all of that provision. And it concerns me, particularly around, you know, the partners and, you know, refuge accommodation and quality accommodation. I don't know how many times we have to, you know, talk about actually we're moving someone in who has left everything. When victims flee in domestic abuse situations, a lot of the time they literally leave everything. And then we are putting people in temporary accommodation that is not suitable. You know, there's different areas that in this county, there's different hotels that are used that are poor quality, that have other defendants being put into those premises. It's not appropriate to put domestic abuse victims in with other perpetrators just because it's the cheap option to do so. And, you know, there needs to be further work that is done within the county to make sure that if we are putting people into temporary accommodation, it is quality temporary accommodation where actually they can be safe and actually start to try and process what has happened to them. And that's my plea. You know, it has to be, we have to have the resources to deal with this. It's not getting any better. The violence currently that I see on a day-to-day basis is off the scale. And that's what concerns me and my staff.
Yes, thank you for enlightening us like that. It's very concerning that the violence is actually on the increase in this day and age. And yeah, from what you've said, it sounds like victims of domestic support do need more support, better support. It seems like they're being punished twice, in effect.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sims?
Thank you, Fiona. No questions, but commend your presentation and something we need to think very seriously about.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Coos?
Thank you for that, Fiona. So I've got a couple of questions. And I'm going to say this now, as an ex-director of social services and currently a chair of a safeguarding board, my first question is, it's great what you're doing, and what I wanted to ask you is how do you link with that wider partnership? So you've got safeguarding boards across adults, children, community justice, you've got domestic abuse boards, you've got housing boards. How do you actually link across that? Because what I'm seeing here is a lot of activity, people getting really good service, and then they move on. So where are they moving on to if you haven't got those links? Because then you're going to get fall down in service, and then you've got that repetitiveness, haven't you? So that's really a question. And also the interesting stuff you're saying about children, I'm assuming you do link with children and families and adults, because obviously there's legislation and statutory duties around organisations in order to deliver. So it's just a question about that partnership working for me.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we do work with partners, obviously, and with the different boards that are in the county. We are part of the domestic abuse and sexual violence boards. I sit on the adult safeguarding board. Good. We have multi-partners come and sit on our sunflower team board. We have, you know, the Western Northants partnership and health that we report to on a quarterly basis with regards to our performance and what we are doing, and obviously how we are working with partners. So it is a complete partnership approach across all of the boards. Just to put that, you know, quite clearly there.
So what about the follow-on? So if you've picked up, because you've got a lot of cases, they're holding 130 cases.
Yeah.
Which is quite high, really. So if somebody's gone through a therapy session and they get to the end, what happens then? Because so often people, what I've experienced is particularly if there's a mental capacity, if there's an issue around, you know, that mental health, that is a continuation. It doesn't stop then. Somebody continually needs that. So what happens then? Because there's pressure, isn't there, in the services, in public services? There's massive pressure on referrals. So how do you get them through?
There is always pressure, isn't there, unfortunately. and we're well aware of that. For example, I think I said in my presentation, you know, we have like a watchful waiting period, or we will, you know, if it's a child, for example, and they're on the waiting list for CAMS, we will keep that contact with the individual or with, you know, parent as appropriate. We don't just say, oh, well, you're on that referral list, there you go, you know, goodbye. We make sure that there is still that support that's there if it is required.
And you're getting that support, that onward support then from the services?
I mean, we do. I mean, if there are any issues, then we will escalate it appropriately.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keys. It might not surprise you, Johnny's going to look at me like I'm going to do numbers, which I probably will, but 40,933 cases referred over the past year.
Yeah.
That's close on 10% of the population of Northamptonshire. So, you know, 1 in 10 people is dealing with the service. Is that going up, down, plateauing? Is it consistent with other counties that have a service report? And a second question regarding budget, and I take the Commissioner's point about funding and changes last year, which I wasn't aware of, and I don't mind sharing. If your service is going up greater than inflation and what you can apply to a budget, do you need more money to fund this very good service than the budget would actually possibly allow? There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So,
my way or yours?
I think you could do the last one. With regards to whether or not the service is having more cases or not, the caseload has actually gone down, but there's reasons for that. The way the government asked the police to record cases changed. So nationally, the police are now recording less cases than previously, but it's a recording issue that has skewed the figures, if I can put it like that. The volume of caseload, and particularly around domestic abuse, is increasing. There's no question about that. But we also, as I said earlier, actively ask clients to report. You know, what we don't want is for them to report once, and then if the behaviour is still ongoing, not to report that. It's really important so that we can get a full picture of what is actually happening. So we do encourage people to report. And because they're getting that one-on-one support and the right support, that gives them the confidence in many ways to do so. So that is one of the things with regards to the figures. With regards to the budget, I will always want more money. But if I can come to Johnny on that one.
Thanks. And thank you, Fiona, for a really good presentation. And I think the office really gets the value of having the voice service in-house, and as the Commissioner said at the start, having not a sort of contractual arrangement with its victim services, which usually brings that sort of escalation of costs, doesn't it? Whenever you're asked changes the cost change. Instead, we have a sort of very integrated dialogue with Fiona and her seniors and with the other directors in my team about how we manage pressures. So I think my answer to the finance is obviously all areas of the Commissioner's business work with me and Vaughan to establish the balance of use of funding. We put a significant amount into the victim service. We've increased that at times when we're under pressure in order to provide some resilience. We did that recently with the witness care unit in order to support. But it is that constant balancing act. The thing I just wanted to flag is that being integrated in the team means that as well as having the great victim service staff, the specialists, Fiona and I have access to great communication support because we get an overall communications approach from our excellent Director of Communications. Performance, which you're going to talk about in a second, we've got access to professional performance management and an oversight and analysis that Tom and Paul will talk to you about in a moment. And then, you know, beyond that, obviously budgets, estates, etc. So that integration, I think, really helps us to manage the pressure. And being in-house means that we have a really honest exchange about the balance of needs. And as the Commissioner rightly said, funding from partners is also very welcome in terms of keeping things moving. But we're seeing that integration working, back to Dr. Cuss's point, in the partnership world. We're going to present to the youth offending team who have through the fact that the Commissioner's team are involved in that, the Victim Service suddenly has an extra large voice to sort of bring to the table. So it's that mainstreaming the Victim Service into what we do is bringing all sorts of benefits across the piece, I would suggest. So there you go.
Could I just say, Chair, just in relation to serious sexual violence and domestic abuse, it's a really great concern of mine, the figures. You know, we're living in a world that seems at times very hostile to women and girls, and it's something I take really, really seriously. I just want to flag up with you that we've got 16 days of activism coming on stream from November the 25th to December the 10th. So November the 25th is White Ribbon Day, where male allies can signify their support for women, and there'll be lots of different activities going on, as you know, because your staff will be involved in helping deliver them. But I think it's really, really important that we highlight that and encourage people to participate, because we need to change the culture, don't we? We need to stop it happening in the first place. And this is an opportunity for us to all get involved in that. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to note all of that down, and I'm sure our comms team can share those dates with our members and external agencies, etc. Very happy to do that. So that concludes that item on the agenda, and the panel's asked to do what it's already done, so there's no further action. We'll move on to the next point, item 8, the overview of performance in key areas of service delivery, and Johnny Bugg, the Chief Executive, and Tom Smith, Insight Analysis. Have you got Paul with you as well?
I think what I'll actually do is, do you chaps need to be at the front, or do you want to take my place here and I'll move across? Okay, fine. So I'll just introduce another couple of excellent members of the Commissioner's team. So Paul Fell will be known to some of you in the room, particularly those of you with a policing background. Paul's our Director of Performance, and will introduce himself and Tom more fully in a moment. And Tom Smith's our Head of the Analysis function in the Commissioner's Office. The idea today, you'll see you've got quite a big pack. It isn't to discuss it in every detail. It's to show you the full stretch of our potential offer. And then from there, we can hopefully triage down to the areas where you really want the performance information. But I won't steal too much more of Paul's thunder. Paul, do you want to join up here, or are you going to...
I'm okay supporting Tom.
Is that all right? I just was wondering about it was microphones.
Can you get a microphone, Paul, so those outside of the building can see it, if that's okay? Thank you.
You good?
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Those that know me know I don't need a microphone at the front of a room, but nevertheless. Thanks for inviting us here. So, as Johnny said, Paul Fell, I know a number of you in the room. I'm the new job title, as of a couple of weeks ago, Director of Performance in the Commissioner's Office. And Tom Smith, who'll speak in a minute, I just want to introduce a few things, is our analyst, Insight Analyst, within the Commissioner's Office. So, the reason that we've asked to come along and speak rather than just provide you with a report today is we're on a bit of a journey where we're becoming more robust in the way that we hold both the force and the fire and rescue service to account. It's done in different ways. It has to be done in different ways because the way that national data is gathered varies significantly between the two services. So what is captured in very, very finite detail around policing is not captured naturally around fire and rescue service, which makes comparative analysis a lot more tricky, a lot more difficult. And we're still working hard on that. The reason Tom's here, Tom has done some work with another Commissioner's Office elsewhere in the country to produce this type of performance pack. So this data that comes from here, we are trying to produce a report that serves multiple purposes, as opposed to having to produce reams of reports for individual sets of circumstances. And obviously reporting to the panel to allow you to do your scrutiny role is one of the purposes that we need to build into this. So a large part of the reason that we're here today is you don't need to give us the feedback today, but it's to seek some feedback, if we can, Chair, from members around what you'd like to see, what you'd like to see. There are some things that we can deliver, there are some things that we won't be able to deliver, but if we understand, the better we understand the needs, the closer we're likely to get to meeting them over the coming months. There are two reports here, which Tom will go through shortly. One is around 999 emergency call handling performance, and then there are some reports around various categories of crime. They're not all the reports that we could produce. Neither have we selectively chosen them around areas that cast the force in a positive light. There is some positive performance in there and some less positive performance aspects in there as well, which you'll see when Tom gets there. It's not our intention to go through all of these data sets in detail. We don't have the time to do that. Happy to take questions outside the meeting in relation to that, however, if that's necessary. So Tom is going to go through the 999 report first, and he will go through most of the charts very, very quickly in there. The reason for that is Tom has constructed these charts in a way that there's a narrative with most charts that tell you exactly what's being displayed. But if you look at the burglary or the violence or the vehicle crime charts later, if you understand what the charts in the 999 report say, you'll understand the rest of them, because effectively they mirror each other. And that's been done deliberately. So once you get an idea about what the data is telling you on any subject matter, you should be able to understand future subject matters as well. So I can pick up any other points as we go through, but if I can, I'll hand over to Tom to start with the 999 call stuff. Tom, please.
Thanks, Paul. So as Paul indicated, this is the 999 report. I'll spend a bit more time on this first kind of section just to show you the layout. As Paul said, the rest of the reports are quite uniform, so if you understand the layout of each kind of graph, then it should follow through. So this first metric is in terms of the 999 call volumes. This, in all honesty, isn't a great kind of comparative metric to use, because it's all based on the size of your force. So you would expect us to have less calls than other bigger forces like Avon and Somerset and Essex. But we've included in here just for completeness, so you can see how many calls Northamptonshire Police are getting on a monthly basis and an annual basis. And you can see the first three kind of charts just show some key figures. So the latest month, which is from August, like the force, for example, received just over 13,999 calls, whereas our MSG average received 21,100. So again, as I go further down, you'll see we've got some quite big forces in our MSG, so that's not surprising. Again, you can see same kind of setup, but over the latest 12 months, you can see how many calls we've had, 143,000, and compared to our MSG. And I suppose what is interesting, that the box on the right-hand side, you can see our percentage change rolling year on year. So whereas our MSG, on average, has received just shy of a 3% kind of reduction in calls, we've actually seen a slight increase in 1.7%. So there's some interest there. Moving to the next section, the first chart on the left-hand side is our 3-year local trend. So, and again, this is the same for every kind of metric, and we would go to the crime report as well. You'll just see Northamptonshire's month-by-month volume for whatever metric that is. And then this middle one here is the national ranking tracker. So there's 42 forces, and you can see where we are month by month. Again, this is obviously pure 999 volume, so you can kind of take our national ranking there with a pinch of salt. And then, as Paul did mention as well, each chart does have a slight narrative, so hopefully from reading from that you can get a general idea as to what is being displayed. And then we have the rolling 12-month total, so the bar chart there on the right. You can just see over the last 3 years how many 999 calls we've seen. And as you can see, the year to the end of August this year, we have seen a slight rise, by like 3,000 compared to the year before, for example. And then finally, these last two charts here, so we've got the line chart, which shows the trend in Northamptonshire, which is the burgundy colour, compared to our MSG average, which is in the blue, and our national average in the green. Again, with this metric, it's not particularly useful, but as you'll see with the other metrics, you should get a good idea as to where we are with our MSG and national averages. And then where possible, we've provided a forecast using like a 3-year average on our data there. So if I just move down to the final kind of section, and this kind of compares us with our most similar group of forces. And as I said previously, we've got some big forces in our MSG, like Avon and Somerset, Essex and Kent. And unsurprisingly, the latest month, they've received a lot more calls than us, and equally to the latest 12 months. I suppose what is interesting is the chart on the right-hand side, which just shows you over the 12 months what the percentage change has been. And as you can see, the vast majority of forces in our MSG have seen a decrease in calls. Like Staffordshire, for example, seen nearly a 10% drop. It's only us, or Nottinghamshire, have seen a slight increase, but we're a bit of an outlier there, where we're actually seeing an increase compared to most forces are dropping. Moving to the next measure. So this is how many calls we receive per 1,000 population. So this is a better comparator in terms of our volumes. So, and yeah, if I draw your attention to the latest 12 months, you can see that our rates per 1,000 population is actually higher than our MSG average. And again, you can, similar to the last metric, you can see we've seen a slight increase, whereas our MSG has seen a drop. I won't go through all the charts here, but in terms of our national ranking, we've got the 14th highest calls per 1,000 population in the UK, so one of the highest rates based on that. And again, you can see what that's been like year on year, so quite stable the last 2 years, but we are seeing a kind of evidential increase in the number of calls. And in terms of our MSG and national average, you can see we're kind of hugging the national average in terms of rates per 1,000 pop. So no, sorry, that's our MSG. We're above the national and MSG average consistently over the last 12 months. Oh. There we go, it's back on. Yeah, over the last 12 months, we consistently have a bigger rate per 1,000 population. I'll try not to move my legs. It's that, I don't know. And again, just looking at our MSG, so whereas before we were receiving the lowest calls based on pure numbers, but based on a rate per 1,000 population, we've got one of the highest in our MSG. In fact, we have got the highest over the latest 12 months, so you can see that from the middle chart there. And again, whereas most forces are seeing a decrease in calls, we're seeing an increase.
Tom, so I can just come in. I think the pack that we've got here might have the June 25 figures. Are you referring to August?
Yes,
so there is a difference there as well that's notable, isn't there?
Yeah, so for purposes of the meeting, we wanted to do it for the latest quarter, but the August data came out this week, so yeah, apologies. It's obviously 2 months further on. Yeah. It's getting higher. Yeah, it's getting higher.
Tom, can I just say something? Yeah,
of course.
We should have mentioned at the start, MSG, just in case he's not aware about that, it's not what they put in Chinese food at takeaways. It's most similar groups. So the Home Office cluster all 43 forces into groups of 8. I know that doesn't divide, but Nottinghamshire might not necessarily, their group of 8 might not have us in it, for example. But in essence, they take about 300 indicators, which not only looks at crime levels, but it looks at things like entitlement to free school meals, kilometres of motorway, journeys travelled, etc. And so they're defined by the Home Office as being our 7 closest comparators. So those are the 7 forces in that area. So when we talk about MSG, it's how the Home Office and HMIC, for example, might judge our performance. Sorry, should have mentioned that at the start, just for clarity. Sorry, Tom.
Could I also say, Tom, just before you move on, Chair, that an increase in figures doesn't necessarily mean we've got more crime. It might mean that the work that we've all been doing to build trust and confidence in the communities is resulting in more calls coming through.
Thank you. And moving on to just the next so we've looked at kind of volumes and how quickly our 909 team answering that call. So this is based on your average wait time. So again, it's the same layout. So the top box is the latest month. Our average answer time was 6 seconds, whereas our MSG was just over 7 seconds. So we're answering calls quicker, and that's the same over a 12-month period as well, where our average time is, you see 5.6, and nearly a couple of seconds quicker than our MSG. What is quite significant here is you can see our local trends. So we were quite variable in terms of how quickly we were answering calls. So it kind of got as high as kind of 12 seconds. but then we had kind of change in processes and some investment in the force control room, and you can see the impact that that's had, how stable we are in terms of answering calls now. So pretty much 6 seconds over the last year, and we've obviously even some months we've dropped down to 5 seconds average answer time, which is really good. And in terms of national ranking, we're typically inside the top 10 every month in terms of how quickly we answer the calls. So you can see 1 month we were 12th, but we'll let them off there. And then our 12-month rolling average, you can see how the times have come down in a positive way over the last 3 years. So 3 years ago, our average answer time was 9 seconds, and now we're just under 6 seconds. So some good improvement there. Similarly, same layout, you can see we're continually quicker than our MSG and national average over the last 12 months. And then in terms of comparison with our MSG, you can see over the 12-month period they have the second best answer time. I think Kent are second or third, so they're performing really well there. I'll go over one more metric in the 999 because there are a couple more, but it's more about how many of your calls are you answering within 10 seconds, how many are between 10 and 60, and how many are over 60. So I'll just concentrate on the ones in how many are answering in under 10 seconds, but so the information is there in your packs if you'd like to look further. So in terms of the number of calls answered under 10 seconds, the latest month, 91% of calls are answered in 10 seconds. So slightly better than our MSG at 90%. But then over a 12-month average has actually 92.8%, whereas so a couple of percent better than our MSG there. And again, you can see when the processes were made and the investment in the FCR in terms of our the improvement of how many calls are answered in 10 seconds. Previous to 2024, again, it was quite up and down. It dropped as low as kind of 71% of calls being answered within 10 seconds, but ever since just before 2024, it's continued to be 90% plus, and that's reflected in our national ranking there, where again, typically within the top 10 or top 15 at least, give or take over the last 12 months. And again, with the bar chart, you can see the improvement over the last three years of how many calls have been answered within that 10-second period. And again, our trend, we're continually kind of better in terms of that percentage compared to the national and MSG average. So I'll leave the 999 reports there. I'm obviously happy to answer any questions at the end. And what I'll just go over now is the
while you load that up, Tom, can I just say something? Did you want to have you got questions on the 999 stuff now, Chair, before we move on to something else? Or do you want to jump in when people want, or? Yeah.
If anyone wants to take questions to the floor, Councillor Keeble, I mean, you can go.
I'd much rather take the questions right at the end because I have got one to relate on this, but I'm quite happy to take it.
Anybody else? We'll do questions at the end.
Okay, that's great then. So that was just an exemplar, so we're not going to spend as much time on some of the graphs. What I would just say while Tom's sorting that out is what this is allowing us to do in terms of how we're using these. So one of the reasons we use the 999 stuff is we've also linked these to the HMICF value for money profiles. So we can tell you that there are only 13 forces in the country that have a higher number of 999 calls per 1,000 head of population. And there are only 8 other forces in the country that spend less money per 1,000 head of population on their control room. Yeah, so effectively, we've got high demand in Northamptonshire for 999 calls, which needs to be understood better. But we spend less than most forces, but our performance in the force is higher than most forces. Linking it to the value for money profiles, though, we're also able to say to you that this is not an issue. This is not a pandemic issue, but we've got slightly higher levels of sickness with our frontline staff in the control room, or we, the force, have, the chief constable have. So the questions that allows us to ask is, that's great, we've got a really good service, but are we doing it at the risk of breaking the very people that we need at the front? And it's a bit like Fiona's comment earlier about welfare support. So it allows us to deep dive and drill a little bit more into. So Danielle quite regularly asks the Chief around access to occupational health and wellbeing and welfare services for those staff that are at the front line doing that role. So Tom's ready now, I think, to carry on.
Sorry, thank you. So yeah, moving on to the crime report. So again, exactly the same kind of layout. Hopefully get some familiarity now with what the charts are showing and what they mean. What we've done here is we've just picked out 5 crime types. Some where the force appear to be performing well in terms of the trend and where we are nationally. Others a bit more indifferent, and where there's some causes for concern potentially, or certainly ones which we've rose with the force in our accountability process. So the first area we've picked here is arson and criminal damage. So this is more the kind of like an ASB kind of behavioural crime type, where you can have children setting fire to fences and graffiti and things like that, really. So I'll just pick out some of the key kind of graphs here. So latest 12 months, you can see we've got a lower rate than our MSG average, which is positive. You can see year on year we've had a 5.7% decrease in crimes for arson and criminal damage, where our MSG has just seen a 4%. So again, we're seeing greater reductions there, which is good, and that's evident in our 3-year trend. You can see it is on a downward trend, and we currently have the 6th lowest rate nationally in terms of criminal damage. And you can see that kind of downward trend in a good way in terms of our national ranking. And again, in comparison to our MSG and national average, we continually have a better rate than both of those benchmarks for this crime type. And then in comparison to our MSG, we have over the last 12 months, we have the 2nd lowest rate for criminal damage, whereas previously, I believe we were kind of middle of the park in terms of our MSG. So that good improvements to see there. And you can see there's the 5% decrease. Some forces have had bigger, like Kent and Derbyshire, for example. I suppose that's the beauty of this report. You can see, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what they're doing in Kent, and maybe that's something we can learn from ourselves to take forward. The next crime type is we've picked is burglary. How this is defined on police.uk, this is all burglary essentially, so it's residential and business burglary. It's not just residential. So as you can imagine, burglary is very seasonable. So the darker nights, the poorer weather, you tend to see an increase in demand, and where those spikes are in our local trend, they're typically Novembers, Decembers, and kind of February months. The force have made some good improvements, which they've mainly kind of managed to control through Op Crooked, our Safest Streets campaign. And our national kind of ranking has been pretty stable. Not the best, but we're kind of middle of the road, if we're being perfectly honest. So we're currently 25th, but we were. The previous year, we've seen some good improvements there. So again, just to monitor that we don't kind of slip back to where we were. And again, you can see year on year where we were 3 years ago to how many less burglaries we're receiving now. Again, improvements to be made, especially in terms of our trend against our MSG and national. And you can see in our MSG over the last 12 months, we actually have the 3rd highest rate per 1,000 population. So again, improvements have been made, but we could probably do a better job there. And year-on-year percentage change, we have seen a slight increase, whereas others have seen, Essex, for example, have seen a 22% decrease, and Derbyshire and Kent have seen sizable performance improvements there as well. Next one is robbery. So again, this is personal and business robbery. It's an area where we haven't seen much improvement, if we're being perfectly honest, and it's an area which we have raised several times the force in our accountability processes. Our national ranking, we are typically in the bottom third, and quite stubbornly as well. So you can see we're currently 32nd nationally. We have seen, if you look at the bar chart, we have seen a reduction in robbery, but still high in comparison to others, really. And again, you can see how variable monthly volumes are for robbery on a whole. And in terms of over the last 12 months, other than a couple of months, we're typically always above the MSG and national average based on rates per 1,000 population. And again, just looking at our MSG, we have one of the highest rates in our MSG, even in Somerset slightly higher, but yeah, and so we are seeing some reductions, as that chart on the right-hand side shows, seeing a 3% decrease, but there are improvements to be made still, and we're not seeing much improvement, especially as quicker as we would like with the force there. And then I think there's two areas left. So the next one is shoplifting. So we're not alone in this, but because it has happened nationally as well, there has been a big increase in shoplifting, the cost of living and other factors as well. And you can see our rate per 1K, we are higher than our MSG. We've actually seen a 47% increase year on year, whereas MSG has seen a 12.6%. Now, in terms of the increase, obviously that's very sizable. Through our partnership, through the retail crime partnership, we are being told there is more confidence in kind of shop owners in alerting the police when shoplifting has happened, because the force have improved their performance, and they know the force are likely to come out and investigate that. Obviously, we're not naive enough to think that is just the only reason for the increase, but it's certainly kind of a contributing factor, as well as genuine kind of increases in shoplifting as well. So you can see quite the stark upward trend there in shoplifting, and other than a few months, we're typically above the MSG and national averages. Yeah, we have the third highest rate in our MSG, rate per 1K over the last 12 months. And then finally, ASB, another crime type which similar to burglary, where it's very seasonable. So this time in the summer months, when it's lighter and longer evenings, then you tend to get a bit of an increase in your MSG, which our local trend shows there. And it is on the increase in Northamptonshire. So we've seen a 17% increase, whereas our MSG is only seeing kind of 10%. So this is on the rise in Northamptonshire, and currently ranked kind of 34th nationally. And again, you can see the increases with the bar chart. And we're above the national average on a consistent basis over the last 12 months. And then just finally looking at, in comparison with our MSG, you can see we've got the highest rate per 1K on a monthly basis, which is August, and over the last 12 months as well. So room for improvement there. But I know the force are spending more officers on the beat and stuff like that to try and tackle that. That's it. Thank you.
Can I just jump in, Tom, and ask you to slide back up to the forecast?
Yeah, sure.
So say a bit about what that shows us.
So yeah, the forecast. So this is based on a 3-year trend. So it's obviously ASB is very seasonable, so it's bound to look like it's coming down during the kind of darker evenings. But even though it's very seasonable, you can clearly see on the chart on the left-hand side, it is still in kind of an upward tick, despite the seasonality.
Thanks.
Can I just say something about that, Chair? Would that be all right?
Yeah, carry on.
This is obviously an area of policing business that really worries the public very much. We're all kind of impacted by that, aren't we? But I'm really, really pleased that we're looking, we're establishing a family court so that we can address some of those behaviours from adults in the family courts and stop the persistent and continual antisocial behaviour. And my team's at the minute working with partners in the criminal justice system to see if we can bring in intensive supervision court, an intensive supervision court to do the same kind of thing, so that we know lots of antisocial behaviour is happening and we want to work with people to change their life and alter their behaviours. That'll give us an opportunity to do that. But we know as well that antisocial behaviour can't just be addressed through policing. It's got to be addressed by all of us. We've got to understand better the causes of it, don't we? So we know, for example, that exclusions from schools isn't helpful in this terrain. We know if young people have got no money and nowhere to go and nowhere to feel safe, that isn't helpful. And we know that people with drug and alcohol addictions need help to overcome those addictions. There's a whole range of actions that need to take place, which is why I'm really pleased we've got the Public Safety Board where we can take all those issues and come up with multi-agency approaches to it.
Thank you, Danielle. I will go that way with questions, as Councillor Keeble indicated earlier. She's got maybe one, if not more.
Several, yeah. Thank you very much. Some are, I'll try and keep it short though. Some are quite short points, and then there's one very major one. One thing that I was told in relation to the reporting, it's really helpful, by the way, to have those figures. Really appreciated being able to read them through and all the detail of it. It was excellent. I was told that where people provide pictures or videos of crimes, obviously a lot of people do now on their phones, that when they put that up, they don't get an incident number. Whereas if they phone up and report, then they do get an incident number if they speak. So I just wonder if you could deal with that issue, because it's obviously it's a particular concern for people who do actually take the trouble to take photographs and videos and so on and put them up. The second
Chair, could I just come in there?
I'm going to go.
Well, I just need to say that's an operational matter. Okay. That wouldn't be a matter for my team or for Tom.
But I was just asking for the information, because that might well affect some of the police reporting figures. Okay? Right. The other things are, I noticed that there's different trends on robberies and theft from the person, and I just wonder whether there might be a reporting issue there, and I wondered if you could comment on that. Now, in the figures that you've done, you said you just chose a certain section of crimes. Completely appreciate that. And then in the next item, we've also got as to what we might want to see moving forward. So what I would want to know is whether we could have the figures, in particular on drug-related crime, and whether that might also be included in the work of the panel moving forward. And the reason I asked for that is because of a particular issue which I have raised with you, Chair, in my area, where the drug-related crimes is absolutely horrendous. And it ended up, a constituent came to see me, and after a lot of persuasion actually provided me with a video which I was going to share, but in consultation with the monitoring officer, it wouldn't be a very good idea, because it would then go on the record and it might prejudice a person who actually provided me with the information, and I definitely don't want to do that. I've got no sympathy with the perpetrators who it shows, but it was one of a number of images she had, the person had, of crimes in that area. And a number of incidents. And what it showed, it was one of the most shocking videos I've seen. It was right in the middle of a residential area in Northampton, in St James, and it showed a man with a machete and probably something else he was taking out of his pocket. I don't know if it was another knife, but a great big machete. A man with a butterfly knife with his face under.
Councillor Keeble, probably should interject that it's round operational stuff we are to scrutinise the Commissioner, but I am here happy to the context of the...
that, but I think it's just about the thing was only 5 seconds, but it's about the level of what it shows, and therefore whether we should have these figures included in what we look at, and whether it's understood that the Chief Constable and the force are being held to account in the way that we might like. Because for me, this is like the #1 issue in my area, and it affects a number of other parts of Northampton as well. And what particularly shocked me, and I have to say my previous experience in local government was in Peckham, so I don't, you know, I'm not coy about this stuff, was the level of violence, the fact it was in broad daylight, the fact that lots of people would have seen it. There are about 40 flats overlooking this incident, and the complete sense of impunity which the perpetrators demonstrated, and then the fact that there seems to have been no follow-up, and the person tried to report the crime but wasn't given a number. So what I would really appreciate would be to know whether the force, whether you're able to analyse those figures, whether we might have them included in the next monitor, and also whether in moving forward, because I don't see this reflected in the forward plan, whether we might be able to deal with some of those issues. Now, there are separate issues for the council to consider, obviously, about the design of crime, but this is about knowing the numbers and then ensuring that the force is held to account for what happens in that area, because it is absolutely outrageous what's happening.
Okay, I think it's on the context of Chief Executive raising his hand. I'll allow a fair challenge. Johnny or Danielle, if you want to respond to that, it's probably fair.
I do think it's really, really important that the panel holds me to account for what I do. So what we've tried to present to you is how we keep, my team, how I keep the Chief Constable to account. We are becoming really data rich thanks to the national work that Tom has been doing. So we wanted to show you the kind of data that we use when we have our accountability boards. And we you know, Tom has very kindly and Paul has very kindly put together what we thought you wanted in terms of, you know, direction of travel, how we compare with other forces and so on. But the whole point, Chair, is that you're holding me to account. And if you find that I'm falling down in any particular aspect, then, of course, I will welcome being alerted to that. We take all crime types really, really seriously, and I'm really passionate about working with the local authorities in terms of keeping our communities safe. But I do think we need to be aware of the difference between keeping the chief holding the chief to account, which isn't your job, it's my job, and you keeping me to account.
Johnny?
Thanks a lot. Just to come in on the specifics, if there are case-specific things you want to discuss or to flag as a community leader, we're really happy to be a liaison or to have that conversation with you. But I think the Commissioner's right that isn't for this forum. We have set up a direct email address, electedreps@northantspfcc.gov.uk, so that you've got a hotline to the office, and we'll always see messages from councillors and MPs will spring out for that reason. But I don't think it's helpful for us to start chewing over an operational case that we've not had a prior conversation about in public today. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Paul, did you want to say on the data? Yeah,
just one if I can, back to the council on the data. Yeah, of course we can produce stuff around drugs. I think we need to be careful here. Obviously, Tom can only analyse what's reported to the police. Can't analyse on what he doesn't know. That sounds obvious, but if it's matters that are not reported to the police, it's not in his system, so he can't analyse it. In terms of drugs offences are offences in relation to things like possession of drugs. They're not necessarily reflective of other offences that get caused as a result of people taking or dealing drugs, and I'm sure you'll understand that. Equally, we can't provide this level of analysis around those because there are certain categories of crime that the Home Office don't collate in this way, so therefore we don't have access to the other 42 forces. Drugs is one of them, I think, Tom, isn't it? Yeah, so things like drugs, domestic abuse are two that immediately spring to mind. Well, we can't get this level of granularity in terms of comparative data because the Home Office don't measure. Knife crime is the third one, so there's three really weird ones there that they, at the minute, they don't do that. So I mean, the beauty of this is if Tom, don't do it, Tom, but if Tom goes to the top right of his report, we can filter this with any force in the country, because that's the way that we built this reporting mechanism. We just can't do it with those offences because that data is not available at a national level. So, but we can do the drugs offences in a different way.
I was going to be moving on, Councillor Kew, unless it's non-operational and relating to the actual report.
It's about some of the information that's being put out. The matter has to have been reported. I have reported as well. I know that there's been walkabouts in the area. All of that's been reported, and I just think that it is really important that we act, we hold the Commissioner to account over the way she holds the Chief Constable to account for the delivery of the service. We, in turn, are held to account by our own constituents, by the people who vote for us, and they expect us to be raising the points that are of concern to them and making sure that the accountability structure deals with the top priority issues. And having somebody strolling around St James with a whopping great machete in the middle of the broad daylight with what looks like a drugs crime is by far and away a major area of concern, and we need to be seen to be holding the Commissioner to account for it, who in turn needs to be holding the Chief Constable to account for it.
Okay, I note your points, and I'm sure you'll raise it with the Commissioner outside of this meeting today. Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned antisocial behaviour. It's as you pointed out, it's a blight on many people's lives, and it encompasses everything from people being noisy down the shops, noisy partners, up to those what the media would term as neighbours from hell. Some of it can be very, very serious, have huge implications on people's lives, and we, certainly in Corby, have got individuals who are bordering on taking their own life because of the inactivity. So it's great, we need the data. We have insufficient data because people don't report it. And the feedback that comes back to us from the residents in Corby is that they don't report it because the police and the council don't do anything. Well, that's their perception. Or generally by they don't do anything is they don't do what they expect them to do. I take action. So we've just launched an antisocial behaviour strategy. And as obviously the Commissioner, I just want to know how you're going to hold the Chief Constable to account in relation to supporting us in a joint strategy to combat antisocial behaviour across the north of the county.
Well, there are two things. So we've talked to the Chief and his senior leadership team at length about what to do, particularly in Corby, but in other town centres as well, because, you know, we've experienced some really extreme behaviours, haven't we? And that's why neighbourhood policing is really, you know, a really top priority for the Chief Constable and for me. But we need to do an awful lot more than that. We need to really understand what is going on with that kind of lawlessness. And I've already mentioned, you know, that I'm not happy with the drug and addiction services that have been offered by the councils. And we had a retail roundtable very recently where we made suggestions about how those services could be improved. And that's very timely because new contracts are being tendered for at the moment. So we want to see better outreach work for drug and alcohol addiction. I've talked about the family courts that would be dealing with repeat offenders. I've talked about the intensive supervision. But we need to do a huge amount more, as the Chair is very, very well aware, with our young people who are causing difficulties in our town centres. We've got to stop the number of exclusions that are happening. We've got to provide safe spaces for young people. And I know the Chair, like me, is really passionate about that. And we need to really make sure that people do report in. We need to see the pattern of what is happening, and we need proactive people on the ground, which could include town wardens, neighbourhood wardens. These are not just policing matters. These are multi-agency matters.
Thank you, Danielle. Any other points, Councillor MacDonald? Happy to move on?
I take all that on board. It's a big jigsaw puzzle out there for people. Exclusions, yeah, I understand that as well. But we always seem to ignore the other children in the class who are being affected because schools are penalised for excluding children. There doesn't appear to be that support there because there isn't the funding to support the children who end up getting excluded. But it basically comes down to the fact that people do what they want because they've got no fear of being arrested. They've got no fear of being prosecuted, they've got no fear of being convicted, and they've got no fear of being punished. That's why they do it. So when people ask, we want to see Bobby on the beat, we want to see Bobby on the beat, but we want to see police officers stopping these things. Yes, the rest of the jigsaw puzzle is there, but we want the police to do their bit of the puzzle. Everybody else can do their bit, but unless the police do the important bits with stopping that behaviour immediately when the public see it, you know, we'll just be having the same conversation several years from now.
Well, let's hope not, because let's hope that the plans that we are putting in place will have some impact. But you're right to mention consequences. So one of our difficulties is the blockages in the criminal justice system, and they are really severe. You know, I've told the panel before, I sat on the bench with a judge and we listened to a rape case that took 6 years to come to court. That is not justice, is it? And you're quite right, you know, even when the police, you know, when the police do their job and the perpetrators are apprehended, what happens then in the criminal justice system isn't always satisfactory from our point of view. I am the national lead for the commissioners for the criminal justice system, and I know we're working really, really hard at a national level to put in you'll have seen it, different measures to ease the pressures on the courts, but also to keep low-level offenders out of the system so it frees up space to deal with those higher-level and repeat offenders. And we need to do an awful lot more of that. I share your frustration. I share it. I have got a little present for you. You like presents, don't you? This is one of the schemes that we have to intervene in the process. So it's our immediate justice team, where they take lower level offenders and work with them to we call it's immediate justice. They have to do hours of community work according to whatever it is they've done. I've asked my team to produce these information sheets, Chair. You'll probably get one at each meeting. Which is I think they found a really lovely way of giving you the information that you might find helpful. So one of the things is, Councillor MacDonald, is we always welcome referrals into this scheme so that we can support places like Corby Town or the villages address some of those issues. Is that okay? Is that a nice present?
It's a nice present, no cake, but it's a present. Yeah, thank you for that. I can see, I can think immediately of where I'd like to place some of these people, but we've got to get them into the system, we've got to get them referred, and that means Bobby's locking them up. Okay, but I know we can work together, Daniel. I'm not having a go at you, I'm just, as you've already said, asking you to hold the chief to account.
Thank you both. Andy?
Yeah, I'll try and be quick. It's obviously a real tricky balance between holding you to account and what you hold the chief to account for. That data is great, but I think that is more for you to use, as you've already said. What I'm keen to know, though, is what are your aspirations to hold the chief constable to account around the most similar forces? You know, are you accepting average amongst the most similar forces? So we can't hold you to account until we know what aspirations you've got for the force to be achieving. So is it a reduction in burglary? Is it to stay still? Because then we can hold you to account if you're not holding the chief to account for that. Does that make sense? So I don't know what your aspirations are around setting the chief in both police and fire their goals to achieve.
Well, the bottom line is about community safety, isn't it? And that's got two aspects. It's about whether the communities are safe or whether they feel safe. Both of those two things. So, you know, that's my public safety plan, and the chief's plan and the fire chief's plan are all they're all separate, but they refer to each other and they're integrated, if you like. So for me, that puts us as a county one step ahead of nearly every other commissioner, because we're the first county local policing authority that have managed that kind of integration. I think that's a huge plus. For me, how the public feel is really, really important. So we know that even where the crime figures have gone down, people often still don't feel safe. And for me, that is a real worry, and that needs to be addressed by all of us. The way that we hold the police to account is we use this data, we theme our accountability boards, and we hold the chief to account. We've got a whole number of priorities. One is young people, one is violence against women and girls, and one is around keeping our streets safe, which is about all the things that we've been talking about, antisocial behaviour, and all of those kind of things. And yeah, so I'm hoping that now you've seen the data and you've seen the breakdown, you'll see how it works on our accountability board.
Okay, and just a very quick second question. Clearly, we are here to hold the Commissioner to account for delivery. You've got your delivery plan. When are we going to see a performance pack around what you're doing to achieve what you said you'd do in this document?
We've just produced an annual report, so you will get an annual report which is reporting against those every year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody? Johnny, do you want to come in?
I think it might be on your forward agenda, so tell me if not, but I think we were going to have a look at what the accountability model looks like, how we do the holding to account piece. Am I right in that?
Just
and
stand by a second. I do believe something in the forward plan, but...
And in any event, just while I'm filling for you, what we have here, I think is everything. We've given you the big data pack of all the material that we use to do that holding to account. You won't want all of this every time, but we wanted to show you the breadth that's available so that we can dip in and get some views from you on what would be the key metrics that would be useful to see. Not so that you can sort of duplicate the holding to account for the chief, but so that you can get a sense of performance. It's also worth mentioning there's a big fire section to this. I suspect we should probably put a pin in that and talk about that at a future event because of time.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I think there'll probably be members around the room asking for some specifics, and they can bring that to you before the next meeting. If I carry on taking points, Councillor Lister, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, and completely echo things on school exclusions as well, because that is I can't believe I've worked with lots of schools and no teacher wants to exclude a child, but there's generally problems around the support that they get, either needing specialist support from special schools or great if we can get police or some form of support in there to help them. But and that's the way we can do this, because I know no schools really want to exclude children. I'm sure you've got the same view as that. You made a statement before, which is quite interesting, that some of these figures are going up, going down because of the work you're doing in the community, and so it doesn't necessarily reflect there's more crime, there's just maybe more reporting. What evidence do we have to support those claims? Because I'd be really interested to see the type of work we do, because certainly in rural areas, I don't get the same feedback that people are seeing more active policing, frankly. I mean, and that's not a dig, but I'm really interested to see what we're doing and how those numbers are formed so that we can make that decision. Is it going up because we're reporting? And if it is, that's great, because we're building that relationship with the community.
So we have regular roundtables, and we have a retail roundtable. So it's the people round that table who tell us that they feel more confident reporting to the police, and that the people around them do. So, for example, Northampton Bid at the last round table, they were really, really clear that the measures that have been put in place to support the retailers are working in terms of trust and confidence, and that is why there is a lot more reporting on that level. In terms of rural crime, I'm very exercise about how we deal with rural crime, and we're just about to have our second rural crime roundtable, which I'm really looking forward to. Everywhere I go talking about rural crime, our rural crime team is highly, highly praised. They're highly praised for being really responsive, being responsive really quickly and putting measures in place to stop whatever it is going on. And they've been amazingly successful in retrieving things like, I think it was 42 caravans, or stopping tractors being ferried across the channel. Or they're a really, really effective team, I have to say. And I have asked the chief to have a particular look at that team to see what it is that's making them so impactful, because there might be lessons for other teams having a look at that. But that's a lot of how we get back the feedback. We go to the people who are most impacted by these things, and they give us the feedback.
I'd just be really interested if we could publish some information, some data, some stats, some information around that, because it's a lot easier to build confidence when you have something. Some of that they'll say, well, great, you had a panel, people sat around, and they're telling you the people that you're speaking to are seeing results. That's great, but there's also a lot of people that we don't speak to. But if you've got that evidence to say actually things are getting better, it's a lot easier to say you need to give them another chance. Please do. You need to report this crime, because it's very difficult for us to say, well, they're never fixing it, because you don't call them. It's a bit like councillors. If nobody ever reports a pothole, it doesn't get fixed, right? Same principle. So but we need that evidence to be able to support that message, and I don't see it at the moment, but it'd be good for it to come forward.
Thank you, Councillor Liston. Councillor Petter?
Yes. Is that working? There. Thank you very much for Tom and Paul providing the performance figures for Northamptonshire. And I understand you picked 5 key areas for us to look at here, but I do have a question about ethnic minority groups in Northamptonshire. As this is mentioned daily in the news, it's mentioned to myself and a few others. So if I'd just like to sort of look at that. In the last census in 2021, we're slightly lower, only 14.1% compared to 19% nationally. So, but when you see religious hate crimes figures actually today, and the national picture is a sharp increase. Now, 2024, I believe, in our community safety partnership numbers, we showed a drop especially in West Northamptonshire. However, nationally, there's been a 25% increase and rise, especially within the Jewish and Muslim communities. Now, the only mention so far I've seen was in Fiona's slides earlier, where 969 hate crimes happened. So can the panel and the residents have confidence in religiously motivated hate crimes are being properly monitored, addressed and reported here in West Northamptonshire and North Northamptonshire? Considering our calls are increasing, this breakdown would certainly be helpful for us to see.
That is a crime type of particular interest to me. So it is something I talk to the chief about quite a lot. I know that we have put in really strong measures to prevent hate crime. The chief and his senior leadership team have got a strategy which is about going out into the communities, particularly the mosques and to the synagogue, to hear from people exactly what is happening to them out in the community and put in measures to support them and provide them with the reassurances they need. But, you will know that I work very closely with the communities of all types, and there is palpable fear in the communities at the moment because of the perception that they're living in a hostile environment. I'm very acutely aware of that. And I do talk to the police chief about what we need to do about that from a policing point of view. But like with everything else, there are other things that need to be put in place to support those communities. It's not all about policing, but it is about the general culture and the feeling that people have in the streets. So if I tell you, for young people, I know very well we're out in the nighttime economy and were racially abused because they weren't speaking English. They're international students who bring in a lot of money into our county, and the last thing I want to see is international students not coming to Northampton University because they don't feel safe. So I think it's an issue for all of us. It's not just a policing issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of like following on from what Councillor MacDonald said earlier on about antisocial behaviour, a lot of people that I'm speaking to believe that they report this and nothing happens. So it's one of those things that definitely needs to be addressed. Yeah, any sort of initiative is very welcome.
There is a difference between a hate incident and a hate crime. But what I've asked the Chief Constable to do is to also record hate incidences, because if there's a pattern associated with that, then there will come a time when actually it stops being an incident and it becomes a crime. So, yeah, that's part of what I've asked the Chief to do.
And yeah, just to finish off, I will mention about antisocial behaviour that there's seen a marked improvement on the Market Square. So I'd like to say thank you very much for your work there. The people around the Market Square have said there's been improvement, so yeah, good job.
Lovely, but I'm really pleased with that. Thank you so much. But that was a multi-agency effort, and I think that bit is really, really important. The more we collaborate, the better it is.
Thank you both. Councillor Jenny?
No questions as such, but I think as a comment, the response and your figures are obviously very dependent on the number of police that you're able to recruit and the visibility within the residents. So I don't know if there are any steps in line to recruit more police officers.
We're hoping to recruit 142 additional police officers this year. It won't in the end be 142 because people will be leaving the service as well, but that's the target we've got. Or not me, that's the target the Chief has got.
Thank you. All good. Councillor Towns, I'm conscious of the time and the fact we've got a couple of items on the agenda to get through and a summing up of this one. Over to you, sir.
Okay, yep. Thanks for the presentation. I like the consistent approach of the data. It was interesting to see some of the seasonal fluctuations associated with crime. That was quite interesting, and also some of the explanation around the statistics and how they can be affected by the type of reporting and the criteria that's used in assessing those. And I was also echo some of the concerns on antisocial behaviour that Councillor MacDonald and Petter have raised. But where is this data found? Is it publicly available somewhere?
Yes, so all the data you've seen today is all publicly available. Sorry. Yeah, so all the data that are in the packs that you've received for the force, they're all publicly available data. So that's from police.uk or the ONS and gov.uk.
And Tom won't sing his own praises, but I would just point out that he's at the forefront of colleagues in his shoes in other parts of the country in terms of how we're doing this. With Gloucestershire, we've done this pilot work to really produce this rich picture of data and to produce something that's very malleable and can be really used as a management tool. We're in the process of talking to other officers about whether they want to buy into that and to our experience. But it's been a real front runner, and the credit's Tom's and Paul's for that. Paul's corrected, it's just Tom's credit.
Tom, yeah. Well done, Tom. Lastly, Councillor Sims, before Councillor Coos and I sum up.
Thank you. No questions, just really interesting data set and really good work.
Thank you. Dr. Coos.
So thank you for this, really helpful. I'm a bit of a freak around, and I've been nagging for ages to get the performance, so I'm really pleased to see it. When I look at performance, I'm looking at something that gives me that intelligence to ask the right questions, and this is helpful. But I think what would be more helpful, going to your lovely plan on a page, Johnny, you'll know I'll carry it around with you because I've nagged you enough about it. The 3 missions and the 4 tests, that's what I'm looking for in this data. I'm looking for, well, are you getting there? So what would be really helpful, I think, I don't know what the panel was thinking, is almost a summary sheet that says where we are each month on these particular areas that are of an interest. So I'm looking at the 3 missions, the 4 tests. So if we're looking at safer victims, where are we on those in that terms of that performance data? Is it better? Is it worse that month? What's it telling us? Because data intelligence is great, but you can go down a rabbit hole if you start to focus too much on one area. So I'd like it to align it to your 3 missions and 4 tests, if I can, please. Thank you.
please feel free to provide a response.
I think it's a really good idea to anchor the data back to the plan. And I'm really pleased to see you carrying yours with you. So I think we can certainly do that in the annual report. This year's annual report was a bit of a report on a part of a year, but we can really build that in. I think monthly is going to be a lot of bespoke data product for me, but we can look at is there a 6-month point or something of that sort? Yeah. The other thing is that the data is so variable month to month that you don't want to give them, go off down rabbit holes.
I get that, but I think what would be really helpful then is if it helps as a panel to focus, but also I was thinking for members of the public to get them more engaged in the panel and the work that's happening is to actually start to focus on these specific missions and to say, is it December? In December, yeah. So that's just an ask really, and I'm happy to. But yeah, I do carry it around with me, Johnny. Goes everywhere.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. So a couple of points for myself to close off then. So this one's probably rhetoric, but what impact will the measures we have and the ones that the police are putting in place have in reducing crime, or will it actually not reduce crime, and is it growing exponentially? Secondly, what are our stats going to look like in a year's time? And while there's excellent work in it, it's an amazing resource we've got and skill that's doing it. Is it that we'll be sitting here in a year's time and these figures aren't going to be better? And we know now that they're not because of prevailing issues. And if I may, you've given me some numbers, so I've had a little look at them while you've been talking. I think this might contradict itself slightly because it does say 287 people have been referred to the Justice Programme, but it says 88% of those 287 haven't reoffended. That might be that they've also not been caught, and we should probably note that. There could be offences taking place that haven't been prosecuted, but at the bottom it says 65 people out of that 287 haven't engaged with the programme, and 33% of those haven't offended. So I'm slightly sure of the offending rate. It doesn't seem to make 100% sense. So when I see numbers, I do like to have them balanced.
I think, and colleagues might tell me otherwise, that the 65 aren't in the 287. So they're people who've been referred but haven't. It sort of gives an indication of what happens, what's the control. So without the intervention, we're 50%, 55% worse on outcomes, aren't we? So it shows the value of the scheme. I think reoffending, yes, you might say that they haven't been caught for it, but actually that's how reoffending is measured, isn't it? It's known reoffending. I think you'll struggle to find many interventions in the criminal justice space with the results this good, which is why we opted to put the Commissioner's funding into this scheme when government funding stopped, and I think we're really pleased that we have. We'd love more recommendations for places to go and things to sort of point our team members and their charges towards.
No, absolutely gratefully received, and I'm sure over the year we'll have input to add to that to drive that improvement.
Can I just come back on your question?
Yes.
20% of all crime, I think it's 19-point-something% of all crime, is domestic abuse. Is that right, Mr. Fell?
It's about that.
It's about that. We are about to launch a women's charter. It'll be going out for consultation, but we have already started the work on asking large organisations and businesses to sign up to the charter. So our thinking is, if we can collectively, again, all of us working together, intervene in that and bring that rate of criminality down, then we will be doing our job properly. I feel very much the same with young people, and I know I'm on the same page as you with that one. If we pay more attention to the actual needs of our young people and we listen to what they're telling us and we work with them, then we will bring their offending down, won't we? So I'm hoping that working together, we're going to be able to do both of those things. But for me, the 16 days of activism that I've already talked about is one of the ways that we can make an intervention into all of that violence against women and girls. The Women's Charter is going to be really, really important for this county, and I hope you'll respond to the consultation and hope you'll support that. And I think things like that, where we are not just bagging people up, but we're looking at what the drivers for crime are and making interventions to take those drivers away, I think is really, really important.
Excellent, thank you. I mean, absolutely, and the point about the domestic abuse is ever more prevalent, and there is also a point to note that there are men that are victims of domestic abuse as well, and I think the panel would probably gratefully nod that is the case, and there would be a percentage attributed to that as well. So, you know, a fair charter would also be a good thing that acknowledges men probably suffer significantly as well. If anybody has anything else to say, please give me a nod to raise your hand, otherwise I think we are... Done. Dr. Coos?
So just the last thing is, I know we've got a pack in here about the fire performance of the fire service. Are we doing that, or is that just for information?
We said we'd move on.
Move on.
I think we'll bring it back in December.
Yeah,
when we bring it back, when we bring it back, could you put some comparisons in with other authorities? Because this is just Northamptonshire, isn't it?
Yeah, I covered that at the start, but it was probably lost, to be fair. The Home Office or government departments do not capture comparative fire data in the same way that the Home Office do for police data. So we can do a bit of that, but it's very, very labour intensive to do it for all 44 fire and rescue services, because in fact you've got to ask them all. There isn't anywhere I can go to like police.uk to get that. We are working on that in terms of trying to persuade people to do it, because I think it's really useful, because otherwise sometimes it becomes a bit meaningless just looking at your own performance. I think we might be able to provide you some data around what the fire service calls similar rural fire services, which we're categorised at, but it won't be possible to do it at the same level of detail as we did with the police one, I'm afraid.
Thank you. If everybody's happy, then that actually concludes the outcomes for that section. And we will move on to item 9, which is...
Sorry, just to jump in there. So it was implicit in the last comment that there would be a further report on this, a further performance report to the next meeting of the panel. Is that... Can we make explicit that was the implicit request?
That's the request.
And is it the intention that that should be linked to the Commissioner's, sorry, get this right, 3 missions and 4 outcomes?
Yeah.
As yes,
I was going to suggest that if we're going to do what's been asked in terms of linking it to the Safe and Sound plan, it's important that we remember the Safe and Sound plan is not just about policing, it's about fire as well. So my suggestion would be, I don't know how we'll do this yet, but Tom and I go away and look at how we can do that single-sider or two-sider that shows what the contribution of police and fire is to achieving those outcomes, if that's okay with the Chair and the panel. And linked to the annual report ultimately as well, yeah.
Thank you. I did ask that future indicators might include something relating to the drug-related crime, which is a major, major issue for Northampton, if we can get some of the performance figures.
Go to Johnny and Daniel. Would you be happy to take emails from members asking for those specifics for a future release?
Absolutely.
In another bundle?
Can they be included in the report?
Well, the data isn't as rich when it comes to drug offending. It's, as Paul was saying, there are a number of categories that we don't have that. However, a good strategic conversation about drug crime in the county is always on offer at the end of the phone to us. So let's take that up. And if colleagues have any other comments on the data set, then we welcome that. If you want to send them to that address to the elected reps at whatever I said before, Northampton PFCC.
Sorry, I just wanted to come back on that, because there was the issue about the antisocial behaviour. There's obviously some information about, and it's a problem because there's a particular spike here. But in relation to the drugs one, my concern is that it's any information that there is would be useful. And the point about having it to the panel is that it's in public, so it's public information rather than just personal now, rather than just private. Now, I completely understand that if there's difficulty in identifying some of the data, but I think it would be, given that it is such an issue for parts of Northampton, and it's not just my patch, it's a few others as well, it would be very helpful to have any figures or analysis that there is going so we can see what's happening.
The issue, Chair, is county lines. That's the issue. So that will be what I talk to the Chief about.
Knife crime, drug-related.
Okay. In which case, we've come to the end of section 8 of the agenda. I believe we've and say we've achieved all of the outcomes. We've reviewed all of the outcomes, and if that's the case, we're ready to move on to section 9 of the agenda, which is the Police Fire Crime Panel Work Programme 25-26. So I invite James Edmonds, the desk here on the bench, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this follows on from the previous panel meeting. The panel had a preliminary discussion about its work programme for the year, and identified a number of focus areas that it wanted to include and requested that a draft work programme reflecting those and reflecting the panel's statutory responsibilities be brought back to the current meeting for consideration. So that is what you have, the appendix to the report, page 73 onwards. Work programme is obviously never fixed and not open to modification, and we've obviously had the addition under the previous item of a performance report to the next panel meeting in December. So with that addition to what's presented to you, it's for the panel to look at the draft and modify it as it feels necessary and agree it at the end of that. There is also a subsidiary element to the report as well, which is at paragraph 6.4, 6.5. So essentially starting with the Vice Chair, there's a suggestion that the panel would benefit from taking a more systematic approach to tracking the responses to previous resolutions. So the practical appearance of that would be, if the panel agrees, the inclusion in future work programme reports of an additional appendix, essentially setting out resolutions from previous meetings where the panel has asked for something to happen, and recording when that's been actioned, and if not, those resolutions that remain outstanding. So, as I say, that's with the intention of the panel being clearer, being more systematic about when it's asked for something to be done, whether that has been done or it remains to be actioned. Otherwise, Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, James. Do you want to go around the room, left to right this time, and come back to the bench? Councillor Sims?
None from me.
Councillor Towns?
None from me either, thank you.
Councillor Jenny?
No comment, thank you.
Councillor Petter, conscious this is your substitute meeting, but you may comment.
Nothing from me.
Councillor Lister?
No, thank you.
Andy? Eddie? Councillor MacDonald? Councillor Keeble?
Yeah, I come back to the point that looking at the future work programme, I completely appreciate there's overview of selective areas and its domestic abuse. Completely agree with that. However, I just wonder if we couldn't have in there a selected area which relates to the antisocial behaviour, and particularly the drug-related activities, which are, the stats showed, are an issue for Northamptonshire across the board, and which certainly for parts of Northampton are an absolute major issue. They really are. And it's about ensuring that there's proper scrutiny of those areas.
Okay, I'll just get James to come in on that.
Yep, good.
Thank you, Chair. I think in relation to that last point, something that the panel might want to consider is what outcome it is seeking. So if the outcome was the panel to be informed, to know more about what was being done, then that wouldn't necessarily need to be done at a panel meeting. It might be something that could be done an outside briefing. If it was to be done if the item was to be dealt with at a panel meeting, then the focus really should be on holding the Commissioner to account on the issue. So it's not just about, it's about looking at the work programme. It doesn't just include what the panel does at its main meetings, and equally the way the panel does something should be informed by what the outcome it's seeking from it.
Okay, I mean, I think the rationale for including this is that the panel is presumably wanting to focus on the issues that are problematic. You know, it's great to hear about the good work that's happening. What we need to follow up are the areas where there are more challenges, and obviously the antisocial behaviour is one. It's very evident that the drug-related crime is one, because we've seen some horrendous incidents recently, and I see an awful lot of it. I'd have thought that what we would want to do is to look at those figures on the spike in antisocial behaviour and check that they're coming down, that given they go up and down, but the trend needs to be downward over time, and we'd hope to see that. And in relation within that, if there's a subsection on particularly the drug-related activity, it would be methods for approaching, because if they can't actually identify the crimes in detail, they might be able to do some of them through knife crime, but if they can't identify the crimes in detail, then it would be about the specific measures and outcomes from those measures. Yeah. The problem with having them just done by email exchange is that you then don't have the public accountability and the public demonstration of what's happening.
James?
Yeah. Turn it off again. I think if panel members, based on their experience out in the community, and Councillor Keeble is certainly highlighting this, are identifying antisocial behaviour, particularly drug-related antisocial behaviour, as a major issue affecting possibly Northamptonshire as a whole, or certainly parts of it, then it would be perfectly legitimate, I think, for the panel to seek to scrutinise what the Commissioner was doing to address that and to hold the Commissioner to account.
I'm happy to raise that as a question to the panel through Councillor Keeble, with a show of hands if you'd like to see that. Further data, but Eddie, if you'd like to come in first.
Come in first. I think I understand what Councillor Keeble's after. I just want to confirm to get the clarity. Are you on about drug use per se, no, or, as I think you're referring to, is incidents which are wrapped around illegal drug use? Because they're two separate questions. It's like, as Paul Fell was commenting on, it's difficult to record because you may well arrest someone for an assault and they'll have a controlled drug on them. It would go down as a detected drug crime, but it's probably not connected to the assault they've been arrested for. Whereas the incident you related to earlier may well be some sort of drug dispute. And we just need to clarify that, what we're asking. And also as well, you've got to have there has to be a system in place that isn't too onerous for the officers in the police force to record it accurately, so they can then take those details back to us. So am I correct in my understanding?
Yes, you are. I'm not talking about drug use. I think that would be completely unmanageable. I'm talking about the sort of serious, violent, drug-related crimes, which are largely related to whether or not it's county lines, but it's dealing. It's more substantial. It's not just people having a bit of dope in the back garden kind of stuff.
Just going to bring in Dr. Coos first.
So I think you're right, and I think antisocial behaviour is something we look at. Because if you go back to the figures, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit anal when I get data in front of me, but looking at this, month on month, from January, each month, there's been a significant increase in antisocial behaviour in Northamptonshire. So I think that is probably an area of focus, because which is why I was saying about the summary sheets. What I like to see is data as well. What are we doing about that then? Exactly. What actions are in place? And I think that's where we need to ask the Commissioner, well, what is happening? Yeah.
That's exactly my point, and I suspect that embedded in that there's some of this drug-related activity as well. Yeah.
Okay, I think then we're all clear on our intentions. Superb. In which case, I have nothing further to add. Carolyn?
The only thing I wanted to raise with panel members is, I think we've talked about this before, is how we kind of get the engagement from public, because we've had kind of debates before as a panel and understanding what the panel does. And I'm just wondering, James, with our work programme, if it's out there and the public, do we communicate out what we're going to be talking about, what's coming this month, so that public can, if they wanted to raise a question, would have an opportunity to do so? Do we do that?
The information is available if someone is able to find it, I think I would say.
Okay, just to clarify, and I'm sure there are people in the public gallery that are listening to that who might actually study the work plan and put said information out if it's of interest. Yeah. Excellent. And in which case, then I think we've achieved our goals on point 9 of the agenda, unless there's further input, and we will move on to point 10, which is the Complaints and Conduct Matters update. And again, I will refer to James as our Democratic Services member.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an entirely business as usual report. The panel receives every 6 months an update on the operation of the complaints function. That's intended to enable the panel to take an overview, to identify any trends should they arise, certainly not to get into a discussion of individual complaints that may be being dealt with at any given time. So in this case, the report covers the period from March to August 2025, and the current position is that 2 new non-criminal complaints relating to the Commissioner's conduct were recorded at the end of that period. They're due to be considered by the panel's complaints subcommittee on the 22nd of September. Otherwise, there are no other outstanding complaints or conduct matters. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, on that one, does anybody have any questions through to James around the room? No? Okay. In which case the panel notes the report. So at this point, there's no urgent business has been raised in advance. And looking around the room, anybody else with anything to add at all? And we'll bring the meeting to a close with the date of the next panel meeting on the 4th of December 2025. I believe the time is 12:30 in the same location, 1 Angel Square. That's the meeting closed. Thank you.